We need it. Oxygen. It's why we breathe.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Small Business Stories. You know the voice, Dr. LL, Loralyn Mears of Steeris, and every week we are bringing to you fascinating guests. I love learning from all of them. And today's guest, no exception, right? You've come to expect gold as the standard. This is kind of where we are with the show, and it's an exciting place to be. Let me thank you for that. So, in the house today, we've got Jimi Gibson, and he is the founder of the Thrive Internet Marketing Agency, which, yes, is a mouthful, but what does it really mean? It means he's learned how to figure out what the signals are out there so that he can help brands grow. Jimi, welcome to the show.
Loralyn, glad to be here. Looking forward to our conversation.
Excellent. So, one of the things that a lot of people that have dug into you and who is, Jimi Gibson and what's gone on behind the scenes here, you were slash are a professional magician, but you morphed into a marketing strategist. And so, what I want to ask is how this mindset and psychology of magic informed what you do and how you think about brand communication and storytelling.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also just want to set the record straight. I didn't found Thrive. That's Matt Bowman, but the founder did come to me, which we may get into later, about a year ago and wanted me to be the face of the brand. And so that's an interesting twist that we might dig into. But
Oh, yes.
um, yeah, the whole thing about magic is a great conversation starter. And that's where we're going to start today. I was digging through some boxes a couple of years ago and I found this membership card, the Merlin's Mail Order Magic Club. Yes, there was a day when you couldn't just hit the Prime download order on Amazon. You actually had to wait 6 to 8 weeks. But I flipped the card over and I did some quick math. I was 4 years old when I was a member of that Merlin's Mail Order Magic Club. And I got to thinking, wow, that is pretty early to get addicted to something. And so I just loved it. I don't really know whether it was the fact that I knew something that somebody else didn't know, whether it was sort of class clown morphed into magician with a top hat and cape that I wore to the grocery store with my mom. But yeah, I started doing magic shows in middle school for pay, like $25. My friends' parents would pay me to entertain my friends at their birthday party that I probably would have been invited to anyway. So I started thinking, wow, there's something here. In high school, I met a gentleman who was an account executive for a Fortune 100 company that was looking for a promotional entertainer. And I guess I passed the test, and that lasted another 16 years doing all sorts of shows and cutting my teeth and how to gain the attention of an audience and how to keep their attention and to keep things exciting and fun. And so I know we'll break that down a little bit, but yeah, I would say as I hung around that agency and I did shows and then I learned why were they hiring me to do this and how did marketing work? I figured if there was a career that was the most similar to being a magician, it's being a marketer. And so that was the transition. But I always have this lens when I work on a campaign or speak with a client about, basically all business is show business. And there's certain things that happen behind the curtain and there's certain things that happen, in front of your prospects or your audience, air quotes there. And yeah, it's just been the lens that I see the world through. So yeah, happy to dig in on any of that.
Okay, so we're going to dig into that part of it. But first, let's see if we can bust the myth. Is all press good press, even if it's bad press?
Ooh, I would say there are many companies who have suffered great loss through bad press. So I'm not a proponent of all press is good press. But, as P.T. Barnum says, you got to get out there and you got to make things known. And sometimes a little shakeup is orchestrated. I'm thinking about Penn and Teller right now. Many of you are probably familiar with Penn and Teller. They have a show, Fool Us. They've been around forever. They actually manufactured bad press when they first started, that magicians didn't like them. Magicians hated them. Why did they do that? They did that because they didn't want to be clumped in the category of powder blue tuxedos. They wanted to carve their own way. That myth, I mean, that animosity was not there. It just was manufactured so that they could separate themselves from the standard magician. And I think it turned out pretty well.
Oh, indeed. I can see all the parallels right there with
Yeah.
marketing and positioning because it is about differentiation. Otherwise, you get lumped right into that.
Yeah.
Right. Everybody's the same. We'll do the same thing. So let's pull apart a little bit about what you said about looking into the magic behind it all and trying to figure out the brand. Like you even have the magic script,
Right.
as you call it, right, for crafting brand messages. So what is really behind all of that framework and why does it work so well when marketing today seems like just noise and distraction?
Sure. Well, I guess the best way to explain it is maybe we could try something. I'll ask you a few questions and we'll just see where it goes. So, I think I remember from one of your episodes that you're a native Canadian with some Ukrainian background. Is that correct?
Yes, you listened. I love it.
Yes.
Thank you, Jim.
Sure. And are you in the New York City area now?
I am the other side of the Hudson. Yes, the Jersey side. Yes.
Okay. And so are you in a home? Are you in a high rise? Tell me about where you go to sleep at night.
I'm in a home in the burbs.
Nice, nice. And so do you have pets, dogs that you walk or
Pets, dog mama.
good? Me too. I'm a dog daddy. So you probably have a route that you go on through the neighborhood.
Of
I want
course.
you to think about your neighborhood. And for those watching or listening, I want you to think about your neighborhood. So we're all going to just take a little journey here. And let's get, what's the dog's name?
The marvelous Miss Maisie.
Oh my goodness. Now that was that based on the character Miss Maisel?
Yes, I just thought it just fit her. She was this wondrous little rescue thing. And anyway,
Oh,
that's how it started.
okay. We're going to take on a walk with the marvelous Miss Maisie. And I want you to go down a road that you typically wouldn't go down. You're sort of familiar with that street, but you probably couldn't pick out all the houses and name who lives there. And we'll just kind of go with the flow. We're using the theater of the mind here. So there is a house that all of a sudden you kind of stop and you look and you're like, you know what? I know that house was there, but I really haven't inspected it much. And that's kind of weird that the front door is open. Um, I don't know. It looks strange because there's like a stick leaned up against the inside entryway inside the house, like a club or a long kind of thing, not a golf club, but you wonder, is something going on? Is somebody break in? Did they set that down? That's kind of strange. So that's one scenario. Okay. The next scenario, we'll wipe that one away, is the light is hitting that door just perfectly. And it kind of feels very welcoming. And you're thinking, you know what? I'm sort of getting the vibe that there's a party or a get together going on. And they've left the door open because everybody who comes in is going to know, hey, here's the place and the party's happening in the kitchen. We're just going to walk in. That's another scenario. Okay. The next scenario is you look around the yard and all these little holes have been dug in the yard and there's a shovel or spade leaned up against the tree. And you're like, okay, this person must be in a real rush to plant something. This is not really the time to plant things. It's a little cold outside. I don't know what's going on. That is really strange. Okay. And then the last scenario. And for those of you listening and watching, try to absorb all these scenarios. We've got one more. The next one is the sun is actually very low in the sky at this point, and it's reflecting off of the floor in that entranceway. And it looks like that floor has just been polished or something. It's like the floor is sparkling like diamonds. And you just like, that is like a magical, hey, magical Miss Maisie, a magical scene there. And so one of those scenarios may have connected with you. It does, there's no deep meaning behind it, but which one of those four? The open door with like the stick or the club, the open door that's welcoming for that party, the one with the holes dug all over the yard, or the nice reflections on that floor sparkling like diamonds? Do you have one?
Yes. The holes in the ground. I was intrigued. I was instantly curious. Why have they done this? Is this okay? Did they need help with something? Why did they stop? Why is it unfinished? I had 1,000 questions.
Awesome. Awesome. That is exactly what you're supposed to think through. Now, as you approach, you've got to know more. You sound like a very inquisitive person, and you're a good neighbor, so you want to make sure there's nothing crazy going on. And so as you approach that front porch, you notice that there are some steps that lead up to the main front porch. There's 13 steps. How many steps do you get up before you call out, "Hey, is anyone home?"
I would be starting to do it from the baseline before I even took the first step, just respecting there's a boundary, that's their property, it's not mine, and really trying to balance help with, I guess, overstepping literally
Okay.
my place.
So you're saying sort of zero, but let's say between 1 and 13. Are we at 1, 2? What do you think?
Oh, 1, 2, like within the first step or two, again, I'm saying, like, hey, hello, hello, are you okay? What's going on? Just, I'm your neighbor, just checking in, right?
Okay. Well, you might sort of be like 1 foot on step 1, 1 foot on step 2. So it's up to you, 1 or 2.
One.
1. Okay. Well, what's interesting, and I don't know if you saw this or not, but there's a deck of cards right behind me on the table.
Yes, I see.
I'm going to keep these in frame. And for those of you who are listening and not watching, I'm basically holding up a deck of cards. Um,
In a box.
In a box. I'm taking these cards actually out of the pack, and I'm going to run through those. Oh, there's actually one card that's turned over. Now, I gave you 4 scenarios. I gave you a club leaned up against the door, right? I had a friendly scene of loved ones and friends, or a heart. The next one was holes dug in the yard. And I actually said there was a spade leaned up against the tree. And then the last one, the floor was shining like diamonds. So those are the 4 suits. You lean towards the shovel or the spade. Then I said there are 13 steps going from the ground up to the porch. And you, like, again, were very respectful. You said the first step. So if you look at 1 through 13, ace being low, that would be the ace of spades. Now, again, we've got one card that's turned over in this complete deck here. And if I turn that card over and it's the ace of spades, that would be pretty crazy.
Oh my goodness. So for those lacking the visual experience, Jimmy just pulled up the Ace of Spades, which was the card hidden from view and flipped over. So there you go, right? Magic works. Believe.
Believe. So what does all that have to do with a marketing message? Well, I figured it was better to walk through an example than to be scientific and stand at the blackboard, right? And so there is a 3-part structure to how every marketing message needs to happen. And this can work for a marketing message. This can work for a blog post. This can work for a short video. This can work for a team chat or a new product launch. I've had a hard time breaking it. And so I'll kind of walk through the structure, and then folks can follow along and apply their own business, product, service, whatever the case may be, to how this breaks down. What was the first thing that I did when we started to have this conversation?
Well, we started to explore what were some of the areas that we had mutual interest in discussing. But
Well,
before that, you did research. So I don't know which step, where the line is.
well, when I said, let's try something, and then I started
Oh,
asking you, and I said, you're a native Canadian,
right.
you are originally, have Ukraine background. So what am I doing? I'm like, the most important thing that people want to talk about is what? Themselves, right?
Exactly, right?
And so I'm not telling you my credentials. I'm talking about you. I'm
Mhm.
talking about where you live. I'm asking you if you have any pets. I'm making that connection. And that's the first step. And so, in any sort of message, you have to read the room, you have to know your crowd, you have to pick your ideal client profile, whatever jargon you want to use. Just like a magician walks out on stage and they make a comment about the theater, they may point to somebody in the front row. That's a connection point. And what's happening is the brain chemistry activates oxytocin. And that's a neurotransmitter that actually is that feel good relationship. They call it the love chemistry or the friendship chemistry. And that makes you feel relaxed. Like this is something kind of cool. I'm interested in where this goes. Okay. And so that's the first point at which you get permission to move to the next step. Now, after we went on our walk, I asked you to find a house. And then we went through these 4 scenarios that probably were a little bit crazy. What was going through your mind as you were experiencing these 4 different scenarios?
I was trying to figure out where you were trying to take me. I was trying to anticipate the next, right, the next step.
Yeah. And so that's activating curiosity. Now, I believe that's the one thing that's missing in many communications before. Everybody wants to establish rapport and then they want to go straight for the close, right? But to keep your audience intrigued and interested, we sort of have to tease this curiosity. Now, I know we're doing a podcast interview. This can't go on forever. Forever, I have to have some sort of time frame that's appropriate, right? You have to gauge how long this can happen in the message that you're delivering, right? But what am I doing? I am activating your brain. There's a term, sitting on the edge of your seat. What does that mean? That means that you're not looking at your phone, you're not checking emails. You're literally sitting on the edge of your seat, wondering where this is going. I'm invested. Why are you invested? Because I told you we were going to take an interesting little journey. I gained the connection at the very beginning, right? So again, it has to go through these 3 steps. And that release that happens in curiosity phase is the neurotransmitter of dopamine. And so we've heard about the release of dopamine for social media addiction, right? It's not really the addiction to social media, it's the expectation of a reward. And you said it yourself. You are trying to figure out where this is going, what's going to happen next. You're expecting some resolution, right? And so the last phase of the process should just feel like a natural flow from connection to curiosity. And then if I've basically described it, so I brought out the cards. So you're thinking, okay, there's something with that card. Then we started connecting the dots to what you had experienced. All of a sudden, these weird scenarios became the 4 suits and a deck of cards. And you're like, oh. And then when I flip over the ace of spades, which I drug out a little bit, right? So I'm escalating the tension, I'm creating some drama. The ace of spades is that conversion point or the climax of the trick. And then that's the serotonin, that's the feel good neurotransmitter that's like, oh, everything is okay. The world is great. The magic happened. And so if you don't follow this specific structure, you sort of feel cheated. You don't feel like it's a complete package. Now, the interesting thing related to all of these is there are 13 magical effects. If you boil them all down, they can be an appearance, a transformation, a transposition, mind reading. You have to know what is the magic trick that you are performing for your prospect or your audience or your employee or your team or whatever the case may be. And you have to stay focused on that one magic trick throughout the course of each one of these stages, or the audience gets confused. And we've all seen marketing messages that try to cram everything into one. And so that's the basic structure of the magic script, how it works, why it transfers very easily from a magic performance to a marketing or any kind of message that you want to give. And so I know I unloaded a lot there. Maybe you could tell me how you were feeling through the process. Does all of this make sense? Yeah.
In a nutshell, where I was in the experience was having spent my whole life taking the complexity of whatever it is system, breaking it down to simplify it so I can explain it to others.
Yep.
I was thinking, wow, this is such a brilliant demonstration because you're talking about the arc of everything from the feelings to the technology to the process to the thing to get me to the outcome, which is the desired and intentional thing that you want as the brand, as the vendor, right? To
Right.
call to action, right? Buy my thing, do this next thing. And so I was just sitting here fascinated going, well, I'm along for the ride, even though I am the participant taking the ride, right? It was fun.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Good. Good. Well, I think it is something that people can apply to, I mean, if you're trying to engage your team in a Monday morning meeting, what are you going to do? Well, you need to make a connection. What did they do over the weekend? Pick somebody out, ask them what they did. If you're trying to, and you asked earlier, is all publicity good publicity, or can it be, bad news? Can that also be good? If you're looking at trying to improve your last quarter results and they stunk pretty bad, what are you going to do? You're going to acknowledge the fact, you're going to connect with the team, and you're going to say, wow, you know what, Sue, you did your best. I know that XYZ happened, but these are the external conditions that we had no idea. We're going to pull the rug out from under us. So what have you done at that point? You've made a connection with somebody on the team. Everybody's aware of what's going on. Now, how are you going to raise curiosity? What if I could tell you that we actually have to do less next quarter to break our goals, through the roof? Well, what have I done? I've elicited curiosity. And that phrase, what if, are the magic words. Because what if now starts your brain going, I don't know how that's possible. How are we going to do less work and double our revenue? So obviously there's a lot more that goes into it, but hopefully folks can play around with that and remember that as they start to craft any type of message they want to deliver.
Ooh. So that said, that is a really good segue to queue up where I was going to go next on in this AI world where it is really about how do you build trust, right? In the landscape where so much is dependent on systems that assess and categorize what we say.
Yep.
But I want to tie it back to what you said when you corrected me that you were not the founder of Thrive, but you took over the position to be the face of it and get the message out there. Talk to us about why that is so important these days to have the right person delivering the right message online.
Yeah, great question. And I know we have some alignment on this world of invisibility that often founders and CEOs and executives experience. What's been going on, if unless you've been under a rock somewhere, is the world of SEO and how businesses are found has changed dramatically. We have about 1,000 active clients, and we've seen significant fall off in traffic to websites. Why? Because the world of SEO is a little different. It's not dead by any stretch of the imagination, but these large language models like Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, Grok, Perplexity, people are going to those large language models or LLMs and they're typing in questions. It used to be that we would optimize for a keyword. Right now, and you probably heard the terms generative engine optimization or answer engine optimization. People are asking these large language models questions. So the typical search in Google that people would do would be a 4 to 5 word phrase. The average number of words in an LLM search is about 32 words. So it's more conversational. Now, from a business perspective, why does this matter? People are asking, who is the expert in this field? Who is the most knowledgeable about this particular topic? Well, it's very hard for one of these large language models to grab onto a company name because a company is made up of people. a company doesn't have the same kind of credentials that an expert does, right? And so we saw this happening. The founder, Matt, brilliant mind, but he is not the one to be out having these conversations. I sort of took it upon myself before all this happened to just start writing and putting out content. And he said, we need somebody to drive this process, because if we are going to be recommending this to our clients, we need to be practicing what we preach, right? And so what happens is these LLMs are searching their knowledge base. They're trying to understand who are the experts. And when a founder, a CEO, a subject matter expert has published content with their byline, with their credentials, it's very easy for those large language models to grab onto that and to attribute the expertise to a person. And so what we're seeing is when a business owner or founder or CEO participates in public content, it actually transfers visibility to the business in a greater way than the business transferring visibility to the person. And I know that's a little bit of reverse thinking, but I would say, I know people listening, you don't want to be a content creator. You don't want to be stuck on, social media constantly. There are things that you can do that won't require you to do that. Search Engine Journal actually published a study back in November that says if an executive, now make sure you understand, posted on LinkedIn 10 times a year, not 10 times a month, 10 times a year, their referral volume would increase 30% and they would get higher ticket deals, like 10 times a year. Doesn't mean you have to do it. You can have a ghostwriter within the company help you do that. There are plenty of services that will allow you to do that. But don't rely on ChatGPT to create some generic slop. Make sure that it is educational. It shows your experience. You demonstrate your authority. You gain trustworthiness through that process, and you will rise above the people who are either not participating or relying on the easy button of ChatGPT to create a blog post that says nothing.
And then contributing to the whole high volume factor, because then you yourself create the noise that you're trying to separate yourself from, and then you become invisible. Nobody can see you. It's that whole thing when you go to a meeting. I always think back about several of the people that I've worked with, worked for, had clients, da da da. There's all these people that stand out. And there's only a handful where they were people of few words. And they sat there listening, absorbing, digesting, processing, thinking, contemplating. And then they'd wait, like the 58 minutes of the meeting would go by. And then, right, they take everybody out at the knees with that tremendous insight. And that's the same thing, like to your example of the person who's posting on LinkedIn 12 times a year gets higher volume, higher quality deals because they are speaking exactly to what people want to hear and flexing their authority rather than trying to drown us in it to pretend it's there. That's the whole thing.
Yeah. And when you speak that way, people will link to that content. That content will be distributed. And that's really what these large language models are looking for. You need to pick 3 things that you talk about and make sure that gets distributed in a wide variety of places. Don't talk about 100 things, or AI can't figure out who you are and what you're the expert at.
Bingo, bingo. Now, as we're wrapping up our show, any other advice that you'd like to leave folks with?
Yeah, I would say, and this is old school, and it's interesting how PR has sort of come full circle, but go out and get involved in your community. Whatever you have a heart for, sponsor that organization, be involved in a fundraiser, go to a ribbon cutting, join your chamber of commerce, talk to your local media. Your local media is looking for content too. They're looking for experts. Why can't you be the one who is interviewed on the news, who is the one who contributes to a monthly publication? Those are things that executives, business owners, founders, they aren't doing it. It seems ridiculous. But when you do that, those are third party validation signals that are way more valuable than you posting on social media 100 times a month. And so that would be a hack that has nothing to do with digital marketing, but it has to do with visibility and having people understand what you care about. And yeah, it makes a difference.
All right. Where can people find you, Jimi Gibson and Thrive? Where can they go?
Sure. Well, Thrive is easy. It's just thriveagency.com. There's a bunch of stuff on there that is educational. I write a blog every month and it's followed up with a video. And then I post pretty much every day on LinkedIn. My name is spelled a little bit differently, so I'm sure there'll be a link in the show notes. But yeah, just connect with me on LinkedIn. If you have a question about the show or anything that we've talked about, I'm happy to let you know my opinion on it and maybe steer you in the right direction.
No pun intended there. Right. There we go. Right. Tying it together. And that for folks that are just listening, it's Jimi with a Jimi. Exactly. A little bit different. Having had one of those names my whole life as well that no one can spell, pronounce, any of that sort of good stuff. I get it. Right. Now,
Thank you.
last question before we wrap up the show. Since you've done your research and you have listened, you know we have asked hundreds of people this question. If we got to peek into your closet and there was some footwear in there that personified who you are, Jimi Gibson, shoes, boots, something, what are we looking at?
Well, I live in Charleston, South Carolina, so the answer would have to be sandals or flip flops because the beach is only a few steps away, and it's kind of my the vibe I like to have when I'm in my office or in the yard or out and about. So
There we go. This is why I love asking the question, right? It just brings people instantly to earth. And
yep,
I've got the visual of, I love Charleston. It's one of those just fabulous magical. See, we're coming back. You
there we
got these
go.
words stuck in
Nice
my head
point.
now. Places, just wonderful. So, with that, thank you so much for being on our show.
Great. Well, thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun.
And how about that fantastic intro by Touch Circle?